Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I love that when you respond. Oh, yes. We are the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. Whether you are here on Sunday morning in the worship room, or are watching us on the live stream as I speak, or seeing this at a future date on our YouTube channel, you are welcome. You are welcome. In the long human story of people gathering for a sacred purpose, perhaps the first thing that happens for the community is to recognize who's in the room, to see who's here. COVID-19 has taught us to be careful about the way we gather, and we welcome you to take whatever care you need to be here. But we also can overcome that by a glance, by an intention. We can look and see who's in the room, and we can wave to somebody we haven't seen in a while. We can wonder about who isn't here today, and maybe even think, I ought to give so-and-so a call. We introduce each other, we introduce ourselves to each other, and we share more than just our names and our jobs, but we share, to the extent is appropriate, what's on our hearts, what's in our lives, what is it that calls us to be a community with one another. The one who is new, we pay attention to, not to overwhelm them, but to notice them. The biblical and ancient instruction of hospitality in many cultures is to pay special attention to the widow, to the orphan, to the stranger. I want to invite you at this moment to just look around the room and say hello to somebody. Say hello to somebody. I remember a million years ago when music was just being invented, the all-state choir director said, you have to have someone in the audience that you're singing to for it to be real for you. So see somebody here, make it real with each other. My name is David Carl Olson. I serve this congregation with my colleague, Reverend Israel Bufarde, our student minister, Dana Moore, and our lead minister, Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore. Our music director in the front row is Stephen Michael Smith. In our tradition, the leadership of this congregation is shared by clergy and by lay people elected by the congregation, and I'd like to welcome Congregational Vice President Amy Vella Ripley to address you.
Good morning. I am, as he said, I'm serving as a vice president right now. I'm going to go a little off script for a second because you said to what's also on your heart right now. On my heart is Jackson. My son is not here today. He's with his dad this weekend, and he was a little sad that he was missing this. So that's on my heart today. Just thinking of Jackson, and maybe he'll watch us on YouTube and get excited about that. So, okay, so the Board of Trustees invites you into the fuller life of this congregation. If you'd like to know more about the congregation, you may speak to me or the ministers, or go to the website or see the membership volunteers at the welcome desk in the lobby. Our congregational life is full of opportunities for worship, music making, lifelong learning, service, and camaraderie. We are particularly pleased to share our pulpit this morning with Pablo DeJesús, who I just met a second ago, Executive Director of the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice. Across the country, UU congregations are marking Power Sunday, a day to consider how we may use our power or organized people and our organized resources to influence our pluralistic democracy. Reminds me of what you said at the end of the board at the meeting last Sunday. We are grateful both for this morning's sermon and for the opportunity for an extended conversation with Pablo, beginning at 12:30 in the art gallery. Just as a reminder, meetings of our board of directors are held online each month and are open to the public. The meetings this week are on Tuesday and on Thursday and may be accessed through the calendar on Shelter Rock's website, UUCSR.org. At Shelter Rock, we aspire to be a loving religious community where we can grow spiritually and build a more just and joyful world. You are welcome to join us on this journey. Thank you.
And if you have any aspirations to grow up and be vice president, follow what Amy does. How does that sound? We are a rich and full community. We, this afternoon, also will be having the monthly dramatic reading beginning at essentially noontime, from 12 to 3 in RE room 4. So bring your lunch, I think, and join people for the dramatic reading. This is the month where we mark Transgender Day of Remembrance, also Transgender Day of Visibility, and our part of this will be on Saturday, November 18th, next Saturday at 4 p.m. in the social hall, the film Intentionally Erased, followed by question and answer period. And we hope that you'll pick up a flyer out in the lobby and also show up. We light our chalice. Thank you. I'm so glad that Kelly Lennon, who is the chair of the Social Justice Committee, is here to light our chalice.
We light our chalice.
This is my job, I realize. Make this the right height.
Make it as low as it goes.
There it goes.
We light our chalice. No.
One more time.
We light our chalice.
Well, let's. Oh, there we go. There we go.
We light our chalice.
Not because we must, but because we may.
We light this chalice.
Not because we have the truth, but because we each come learning and seeking new truths.
We light this chalice.
In connection across culture and distance, class and language.
We light this chalice.
That our religion might be a beacon of light, hope, and justice.
We light this chalice.
To kindle our hearts and minds. Thank you, Kelly. Civil rights leader Ella Baker proclaimed, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes." Bernice Johnson Reagan set it to music and performed it for many years with Sweet Honey in the Rock. And in a storefront congregation belonging to the Unitarian Universalist Association in Roxbury, Massachusetts, where 100% of the members were affected by the prison system, and more than half were themselves returning from incarceration or rehabilitation. Reverend Alma Faith Crawford adapted the song as a tool to share the principles of our faith. Won't you join me and our choir in singing the refrain? It goes like this. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Then we wait a minute. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Will you sing with me? We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Once more, and you're allowed to harmonize. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Won't you stand up? We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Now, if you just want to get the choreography, it's just a little like step and touch, step and touch, step and touch, and here we go. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, compassion, and equity in human relations. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. A free and responsible search for truth in life as it finds meaning. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And if you smile, it's better. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We work for world community with justice for every people. The democratic process, the rights of conscience in our congregation and the world. We who believe, we who believe, we who believe cannot rest. We who believe, we who believe, rest until it comes. We build beloved community with accountability and care. We love you, Earth, and the interconnection of your living systems. We who believe, we who believe, we who believe cannot rest. We who believe freedom cannot rest until it comes. Once more. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
I needed a little bit higher. Okay. Just in case you thought we were done proclaiming who we are, we have one more thing to proclaim who we are. Put it more simply, we are a people who put love at the center of what we do. Love from the heart and love for the world. So, if we could get the words on our screen so we can remind ourselves who we are and what we put at our center, will you rise in body or spirit and join me in reciting the words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek triumph in freedom, to serve human need, this do we affirm and covenant with one. Please be seated. And I invite you to join me now in a responsive reading.
You're going to need to open up your hymnal to number 579.
So you will repeat the words in italics. Wait till you're all there. Number 579. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those they oppress.
If we can pull
Tears are not enough. Each Sunday we take a special collection which extends our vision of beloved community by supporting work in the world that addresses human need. During the holiday season, we especially want to show hospitality to our neighbors through two agencies with whom this congregation has a long relationship, the North Shore Soup Kitchen and the AIDS Committee of Queens County, ACQC. Our challenge to ourselves this year is to raise at least $4,000 to purchase turkeys for Thanksgiving. This is a stretch goal for us. This is a larger goal than we have accomplished in the past. So I need to ask you to be as fully generous as you can. You see ways on the screen, and I think in your order of service, by which you may make a contribution. In just a second, I'll be calling on our guest today to speak. And I want to say the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice is an agency, if you will, that has grown from an initial collection of volunteers from congregations around the Beltway in D.C. who came in and worked at the UUA Washington office. And when the decision was made to end that office, the volunteers said, well, you're not going to end my giving to my country. And so they found a way to reestablish who they were as the UUs for Social Justice in the National Capital Region. And most recently, I believe with help from Veach, did some revisioning of who they are to become a national organization with a professional leadership that will engage you and people around the country to implement Unitarian Universalist values in the public square, largely through relationship with one another, through relationship with other people of faith, and through direct relationship with your congresspeople. So we'll be excited to hear a little more from Pablo in just a moment. He's also a friend. I mean, when you get arrested together, something binds you, right? Right? I'm going to invite you to a moment of chair yoga as our meditation today. And so please sit in a way where your sit bones are square. And this is a very, very, very simple thing, but please start with your hands on your knees, easily, just easy. And you take one hand and you move it over to your hip, and you take another hand and you move it over to your knee, and then you kind of push it over to the side, and then pull a little. Stretch and twist. Take a deep breath. Pay attention. Let it out. Hand to hand, hand to knee, hand to hand, hand to hip, hand to side of hand. Deep breath and do a little pull. Pay attention. Don't change anything. Just notice. Let it out. Maybe one more breath in. Don't change anything. Just notice. Let it out. Hand to hand. Hand to knee. Hand to front of knee. Hand to front of knee. Take a breath up. And let it out and pull yourself down. Don't have to change anything. Just pay attention. Take a breath and lift yourself up. The last one, we're going to expose our hope zone, our heart to the sun. So put the hand a little onto the back of your knee, a little back of your knee, and just push back. Expose your heart to the sun. Let hope be there for you. Deep breath. Don't change anything, just pay attention. Exhale. Again, inhale. Exhale. Come back to seated position. And I've been saying, pay attention. Don't change anything. But now that there's work for us to do, pay attention. Change what you can in yourself, among us in this community, in the larger world. Blessed be.
Why do we build the wall? My children, why do we build the wall? Why do we build the wall? We build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free. How does a wall keep us free? My children, how does the wall keep us free? How does the wall keep us free? The wall keeps out the enemy, and we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free. Who do we call the enemy? My children, who do we call the enemy? Who do we call the enemy? The enemy is poverty, and the wall keeps out the enemy, and we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free. Because we have and they have not. My children, because they want what we have got. Because we have and they have not. Because they want what we have got. The enemy is poverty, and the wall keeps out the enemy, and we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free. What do we have that they should want? My children, what do we have that they should want? What do we have that they should want? We have a wall to work upon. We have work that they have done, and the
Now, Pablo, this is all yours. Please welcome to our pulpit, Pablo DeJesús.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me in your pulpit. I want to thank Reverend David for extending the offer. And I want to recognize that over the years and doing the work with UUSJ, I've come to know a little bit about Shelter Rock. If nothing else, that Claire, your social justice coordinator, will ask some of the best questions that I get out of any church about what the heck is UUSJ doing? Why did you do it this way or not that way? So I want to thank you for having great staff who are paying attention to what we do in Washington, D.C. This morning, I'm here to speak with you about our power as Unitarian Universalists. As Executive Director of UUSJ, I'm routinely asked, what is the single most important thing we need to work on? And people are surprised when I say, it's actually civic engagement. It's not a particular bill. It's not a particular policy. It's not particular programs of the federal government or a ruling of the Supreme Court. It's actually civic engagement and understanding something that has been touched on throughout the morning here in this church, which is that our individual liberation is bound up in our collective liberation. That is, in fact, the most important thing that we do at UUSJ, that we work on at UUSJ. It's helping Unitarian Universalists understand that reality and then putting that into practice in the federal space. So, before I get into the sort of heart of what I'm here to talk about, I want to do something that I've learned to do when dealing with the White House, at least their staff, which is to give you the bottom line first. So if you retain nothing else that I say, please know that we have a unique opportunity to help reshape politics in the United States from the bottom up as part of fusion coalitions and collaborations. It is up to us as Unitarian Universalists to lean into what is possible and to make a difference where possible. Because our intervention will matter. It has direct import and value. As UUs, we have fabulous tools and resources to work with, but we need to build them up and build them out. We need to step into our power as UUs to do that. We have fabulous resources. We have the organizing strategy team out of the UUA that focuses on political education and congregational communities. We have the UU Service Committee, which identifies noteworthy needs, causes, and partners internationally, and then brings to scale the work that those projects identify. We have many and an increasing number of UU state action networks. And then we have UUs for Social Justice in Washington, D.C., which helps engage federal legislators. You could say you're a UU ministry for federal engagement. And We can make a difference if we grow and curate and leverage our power as Unitarian Universalists. If we invest in building out the capacity that we have, the influence that we have, our power. I know it's possible. I want to remind UUs, because we tend to forget this, there are fewer Quakers in the United States than there are UUs. Yet the Quakers have organized their people, their money, and their power. They've taken that project very seriously. It's time for us to do the same. So that's the bottom line first. We should organize our power, and we can do it if we want to. Now, in making that case, I want to highlight several ideas and challenge you to discern on how you will respond and engage as individuals and as a congregation. And I want to ask you to begin thinking about what it should mean for our denomination, for all of us as Unitarian Universalists. You don't have to have an answer immediately, but you should immediately start thinking about the implications. So I invite you to begin that with me this morning. In the foreground, most of us are focused on the tragedies in the Middle East or in Ukraine, the government crisis in the House, or perhaps you're thinking about the election results from earlier in the week. Or maybe, as so many that I speak to, you're still focused on the unending gun violence in our communities. And rightly so. These are the pressing issues and concerns of the moment. But it's also important to look at the background, where we have pervasive challenges to our civic institutions and mounting threats to the health of our democracy. At least the inclusive impulses of our American project in democracy. We are living through a major challenge to the health of our democracy. We should all have profound concern that our democracy is in a state of crisis. You know this from the persistent gridlock, from the preponderance of ideological echo chambers, from the resurgent white supremacy activity in recent years, from the claims of a stolen election, from the attack on the Capitol, from the ho-hum response to that attack and efforts to downplay the implications, and from the hundreds of anti-voter bills that are being proposed in state legislatures across the United States. In their new book, The Tyranny of the Minority, Harvard professors Stephen Levitsky, and Daniel Ziblatt lay out a compelling case for why this is happening. It comes down to major transformations in the American society, butting up against a fierce authoritarian reaction to that very same transformation, and then combined with structural limits based in our Constitution that are actually protecting and empowering that authoritarian mandate. It's a thought-provoking read, and I suggest that some of your small group ministries perhaps treat it as an item to work with. They articulate, in particular, how American democracy is at a crossroads. On the one hand, the social transformations since the civil rights era have made it so that the United States is on its way to becoming a truly multiracial and multi-ethnic democracy. That is something that no other democracy in the world has done successfully in the past. It's undiscovered country. On the other hand, we've been backsliding as a democracy since approximately 2016. And we nearly lost our democracy after the previous presidential election. Widespread efforts to restrict voting access, violent threats against election workers, elected officials, and prosecutors, an effort to overturn election results. These are all signals that we are indeed less democratic as a society and as a nation. Now, Levitsky and Ziblatt posit that the multiracial transformation has triggered this fierce authoritarian reaction. And it's coming from the previously dominant ethnic group as it loses its majority and dominant status in the United States. And again, our Constitution is making it worse. Our Constitution is protecting and empowering that authoritarian mandate. So here's the frame. We are much more diverse, we are much more racially equal over the past 60 years than we have been in the past. That is changing our national attitudes and our politics in significant, if not quiet ways. We have more Black and Latino members of Congress than ever before. It's quadrupled since 1980. For the first time, the percentage of African Americans in Congress is equal to the overall percentage in our population. And right alongside that, public opinion has changed. A majority of Americans now uphold tolerating racial diversity and supporting racial equity. So, for example, in the 1980s, a majority of Americans opposed laws that would ban discrimination in home sales, whereas today, 80% support such legal bans. In the 1990s, most Americans opposed affirmative action. Today, 60% tell pollsters they support affirmative action and workplace diversity. Their evidence goes on and on. Their analysis is robust and thorough. And they move into a discussion of how this circumstance has triggered the authoritarian backlash. How that backlash reveals that we have too few elected officials loyal to the precepts of democracy. And they articulate about 15 measures that need to be taken. The important thing for my conversation with you today is that first part. It's the top line message. The social transformation is real, has happened, and is happening. Now, I want to introduce what author and national political commentator Steve Phillips has been writing about. He's the author of Brown is the New White, How the Demographic Revolution has created a new American majority, where his core observation was that race is now more central than ever in our politics. Like Levitsky and Ziblatt, he points to the demographic revolution. Bottom line, the U.S. used to be 12% people of color in 1965, and today it's 40%. He argues that historically, politics was simply a contest between and among white people, with liberal whites competing with conservative whites in trying to sway whites in the middle and who are undecided. And that's how politics in the United States functioned until 1965, when the Voting Rights Act and the Immigration Reform Act were passed under LBJ. That moment marks the start of a major transformation in both the composition of the country and the electorate. And it has finally begun to manifest itself in our body politic. People of color are finally of sizable enough population that when aligned with liberal whites, they are the majority of the people. They can be the majority of the votes. They can be the majority of the policy-making impulse. They have the power to sway decisions, but have yet to fully claim that power. BIPOC communities, as one voting bloc, with all the nuance in that community, my community, together with the white progressives as another voting bloc, are finally large enough and sufficiently formed enough to allow for real influence in public policy. And then Mr. Phillips takes it a step further in his most recent book, which is entitled How We Win the Civil War: Securing a Multiracial Democracy and Ending White Supremacy for Good. And he tries to articulate for readers what's at stake for our democracy at this moment in time. Now, I don't know that I totally agree with his argument here, but it's a compelling argument. He asserts that the Confederates have actually never stopped fighting the Civil War. That some conservatives are taking full advantage of that reality. And that Americans who are in denial about that are imperiling our democracy. Because that is the fire in the belly for the authoritarian reaction that we're seeing. He then goes on to chart a way forward, arguing that progressives must recognize the actual nature of this fight. And if we want to create a truly multiracial democracy and rid our nation of politics, the politics of white supremacy, once and for all, we have to have clarity about the challenge in front of us. Now, Mr. Phillips has been battling these forces in both politics and public policy since he was a member of Reverend Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign. He's part of the Black-led political brain trust that has helped cultivate Georgia's Stacey Abrams in collaboration with white progressives. And he points to a bunch of different examples all across the United States, large to small, of public policy at play where this combination of voting blocs is making a real difference. But he wants us to understand what he calls a neo-Confederate white supremacist movement is emergent, and it has been supported by too many elected officials and too many efforts to suppress ethnic minority votes across the United States. And he calls this strategy a product of the Confederate battle plan that has several major planks. Never giving an inch, insisting that elections have been stolen, perpetuating the idea of white disenfranchisement, rewriting laws so that they can't lose again or don't lose again. Does this sound familiar? Are you recalling news headlines from the past 6 years, at least? In opposition to that, he proposes that we focus on something he's calling the liberation battle plan, which at its heart calls for Americans to shake off the compromise with that Confederate battle plan, to stop accommodating those who hold the centuries-long cherished belief that America should be a white nation. And to support the activists who are confronting these ideas, which tend to be black activists, particularly black women, but they're also increasingly Asian Americans, Latinos, trans, and LGBTQ folks who are really leaning into this space of confronting the authoritarian reaction to this new emergent circumstance in the United States. And again, where Abrams is the most well-known personality. Now, I want to make a comment for my friends who do not consider themselves progressive or liberal, because if nothing else, I live in Washington, D.C., and I have plenty of those kinds of friends. They may identify as Republicans or independents. And I can tell you, as executive director of UUSJ, as a national organization, there are plenty who are Unitarian Universalists. It is true that Phillips is not including conservatives in his analysis of the sway that these voting blocs have. But that doesn't mean that conservatives who care and cherish our democracy don't have a role to play. They do have a role to play. We need them, we need you to find those conservatives who, like you, care for the correct function of our democracy, and to begin to build them into champions willing to side with an inclusive democracy. But thus far, that slice of political actors and constituents has not formed into a voting bloc. It has not manifested its power, neither within the GOP or without. And we can see this based on this year alone. How many votes did it take to get Speaker McCarthy? How many votes did it take to get Speaker Johnson? The moderate middle of that party didn't step forward and claim ownership of the process. So it's not that I don't care, and I don't think that Mr. Phillips would dismiss conservatives who cherish our democracy, folks like Liz Cheney. But the power at play, the transformative power, is actually with BIPOC communities and progressive whites. So I want to pick up on Phillips' use of the term liberation. As Unitarian Universalists, as people of faith who believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we should be champions of collective liberation. We know that the best promise for our democracy lies in the direction of what King called the beloved community. When King organized the Poor People's Campaign, he was organizing for collective liberation. He was organizing the power of poor people and their allies to confront indifference and casual oppression. And when Reverend Barber calls on us to participate shoulder to shoulder, eye to eye, in fusion movements, in fusion politics, he is finding his own way to the concepts offered by Levitsky, Ziblatt, and Phillips. And he's putting them to practical power building purposes in support of beloved community. So here's my point again. Participating in this political complex is the call of our current generation, our current generations, because it's more than one generation that has to be involved in this. We must be champions of a narrative for our democracy that is both sober and hopeful, clear-eyed about the forces and threats to our democracy, willing to acknowledge and name the flirtations with autocracy, and we must be inclusive and welcoming in finding those who share our concerns for our democracy. As Unitarian Universalists, we have an important energy and verve to add to these fusion coalitions and movements. Leaning into such justice-making collectives puts us on the correct side of history and the evolution of our democracy. We can share an important voice in public policy and legislative matters, regardless of where we decide to engage, whether it's city, county, state, or federal. We have power that we can grow, curate, and leverage to meaningful effect. Now is the time to invest in that fusion politics and coalition building. That is what our civic institutions require. Active participation, long-term commitment, routine and ordinary engagement. No magic wand will fix our politics. No superhero leader will chase away the villains. Doing the work ourselves is how we face the threats to our democracy. Civic bravery is how we thwart authoritarianism. We have the opportunity to advance real solutions and participate in the movement that could transform and reform the current paradigm. If the Quakers can do it, so can we. Now is the time for us to chase that dream of beloved community. Now is the time for us to step into our power. Now is the time for you to step into your power as a UU. So join me and UUSJ as we do our part for the federal engagement. And with that, I say thank you, amen, and ashe.
This is not in my script, but I was going to say that UUSJ is a membership organization, by which I mean you're invited to become a member. And you'll see some material on the table on your way out that just shares a little more about some of the public action that they're calling us to right now. And I'm sure if you go to their website, you can find a way to join a membership. I myself am a sustaining member with a monthly contribution. Thank you so much for coming up and being with us. I hope it's not the last time. Yeah, good. When Barbara Zanotti and Carolyn McDade recast some of the ancient language of the prophets Isaiah and Amos, they encouraged us to be humble, even as their song asks for a profound, deep, broad commitment from us. We are mindful that our forebears used their sense of calling from Amos and Isaiah to build a land on this continent as if this were not already the land of many peoples. As Amos called attention to raising the plumb line of justice to guide a correct rebuilding after destruction, may we in our singing be attentive both to justice and to unexamined harm. In the chorus, we use the words sisters and brothers to include the spectrum of gender identities among us, not meaning to polarize, but to say there is a spectrum. And if you need to find a one-syllable word which will substitute for a name for deity, I always say that it is totally possible to be anointed by love and then create peace. I'm happy to say and respect the words imagined by the author and the composer, and I know the meaning when I sing their words, I know the meaning that it brings to me. Will you rise with me and we'll sing We'll Build a Land, number 121. The lyrics will be on the screen. And I didn't ask you if you would do a benediction. Friends, our time together is finished, but our work is not done.
May our spirits be renewed and our resolve strengthened as we meet the challenges of the week to come. This chalice flame is extinguished until we ignite it again with the spark of our communion.
Ashe.
Amateo.